Welcome to Looking at Lucasfilm, the podcast with a different perspective on the world of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and all of the other entities that George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, and the rest of the team at Lucasfilm have dreamed up over the past 40 years. I am entertainment writer Jim Hill, and Dan Zehr, my co-host on the show, and I are recording on the evening of Tuesday, July 16, 2019, which normally is when I'd be headed to Comic-Con. Dan, you were at Comic-Con just last year, right?
I was. It was my first one, and I had a blast. It's not going to be my last one, but this year we're doing a family vacation instead. But I will certainly be keeping tabs on Drew Taylor and everybody else who's there to see what's going on.
Well, to be honest, taking a year off between Comic-Cons, I think is healthy. I began doing it in the 2000s. I wasn't, in fact, it's kind of ironic because this year is the 50th anniversary. And in fact, my first year that I went, I had been invited to panel. And so it's well, as you know, Dan, it's a different way to experience a convention like Star Wars Celebration when you're paneling as opposed to,
yes.
sort of. But I think in a weird sort of way the parallels between Star Wars Celebration and Comic-Con, the whole, you spend 4 days battling crowds, you're looking for seats in these giant halls, and by the time Sunday night arrives, you're beyond exhausted. Your feet ache from walking around the convention center, and not to mention all those hours you spent sitting in line. But in the end, it really all is worth it because you've seen these spectacular presentations. You've had a chance to shop and perhaps purchase some amazing collectibles, and you've met all these great people, or better yet, bumped into friends that you haven't seen in years. But that, for me, that's the difference with Comic-Con is with the San Diego show, it's like you take a convention and you put a convention on top of that convention, and then you fold those two conventions together, and then insert them into a third larger convention. That kind of gives you the sense of the scale of where San Diego is now in its 50th year. In fact, did you, when you were down there, did you stick strictly to the convention center, or did you do any of the stuff that was off-site out on the campus, so to speak?
Well, basically, if you go within a 3-mile radius, you're going to run into it. I mean, the waiters and waitresses are wearing comic book T-shirts. I mean, there are overlays on all the buildings, inside elevators in all the hotels. Even the week I was there, the San Diego Padres were out of town, so the San Diego Padres gift store was a Purge gift shop, an actual Purge gift shop, pretending like the Purge was a real thing. I mean, it is everywhere. And I looked at some of this stuff. I concentrated more on the convention itself, but it really is a wonder, a pop culture phenomenon. It's just.
Oh, no,
it's really something else.
No, I mean, seriously, folks, if you can ever experience, do make the trip. And you're right. In fact, the year I went, same thing. Now that's Qualcomm Stadium.
That's right.
Okay. The year that remember particularly, I was there with my daughter Alice, and that year was, I want to say, one of the first year or two of The Walking Dead. And so inside of Qualcomm Stadium, they had set up a Walking Dead obstacle course where the idea was you had to race through the entire stadium avoiding zombies. And
there is no chance I would have done that. Zero.
Well, see,
but I respect people that want to.
I do a show together, Dan.
Yeah.
Because again, I cannot handle the undead.
No.
On the other hand, getting back to this year's San Diego Comic-Con, again, one of the things that tempted me to want to get a plane ticket is this stormtrooper armor display that Lucasfilm is putting on. It's in booth 2913. And did you hear about this, Dan?
Oh, of course. In fact, Lucasfilm emailed me and gave me a heads up about it. And yeah, I think it's going to be great. Man, I wish I could see it.
Yeah. Now, as I understand it, there are going to be 9 different costumes on display, every one of them screen used. And it's kind of a greatest hit, so to speak, of the Stormtroopers. And we start off with the Imperial Stormtrooper outfit. We get a TIE pilot outfit. We then, we won't go through the whole list here, but we get the biker scout from
Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi, and then we jump ahead and start getting First Order stormtroopers, First Order TIE pilots, and what a surprise, they're going to have Captain Phasma's chrome outfit there. But the one that really seems to have caught people's attention, at least online, is this Sith trooper, which, do you remember when that poster came out for Rise of the Resistance, and everyone was like, oh, that can't be the real poster? I mean, look at all these bright red stormtroopers at the bottom.
I do remember that, yes.
So what do you make of this outfit? Because, again, when I look at these, and you see the name Sith Trooper, I can't help but think of the Emperor's Royal Guard, those guys in those red flowing capes and
sure,
the cowls that we saw back in Episode 4.
Right, and then with The Last Jedi, the Praetorian Guards in Snoke's throne room had the red. I mean, Sith has always been in fashion in the world of Sithdom. And what I like about it, the close-up, I've heard some people saying, well, it's just a stormtrooper that's painted red. Well, that is true to a degree, but there's also a lot of texture and a lot more detail interwoven into the armor, so I'm looking forward to getting a closer look at this thing. But other than that, all we know is it's called a Sith Trooper, and whether it's on screen for 10 seconds or is a major focal point in the plot, I look forward to seeing what it actually means. But it is a really striking costume.
No, absolutely. And I'm kind of hoping, given that there is some Sith Trooper merch that's going to be sold at San Diego Comic-Con. I mean, you know the drill. Sometimes once you get the toys early, you can really sort of eyeball and get a sense of, well, what is this about? Or with the descriptions of the box or that sort of thing.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, what is it? Hot Toys is going to be doing a 1/6 scale figure.
Yep.
Likewise, Hasbro's got one. So
their Black Series 6-inch line, which is really, really popular. In fact, Hasbro will be sending me one of those, so I'm very excited to get my hands on that thing.
Ooh, okay, well, then we will wait for your report on this.
All right. I look forward to it.
Okay, now, interestingly enough, folks, if you aren't able to get down to San Diego to check this out, this Stormtrooper, display of Stormtrooper concepts, not to worry if Dan and I are reading between the lines correctly. At the D23 Expo, which is being held at the Anaheim Convention Center, August 23rd through the 25th, it looks like this maybe not exact set of costumes will be on display. That Lucasfilm is going to have their first ever dedicated pavilion on the show floor at this year's expo, and the description of the exhibit that will be there says, it will focus on the evolution of stormtroopers through the Star Wars movies, and actual on-screen costumes of the films will be on display. And I'm sorry, Dan, I read that and I can't help but think there's a little Sith recycling going on here.
Right.
But I'm not going to fault them for that. If anything, to give even more fans a chance to check this out. Besides, the D23 Expo is going to be worth it all by itself just to go on Friday the 23rd, that's when at 3:30 in Hall D23, Jon Favreau is going to be on stage giving folks a peek at The Mandalorian, which of course is that Star Wars inspired limited series, which is going to debut on Disney Plus, the company soon to launch subscription streaming service. In fact, really soon to launch, as in November 12th. So, by the way, Dan, not to pat ourselves on the back, but did you see while Favreau was out doing promotion for his photorealistic Lion King last week, did he actually confirm what you and I were talking about?
That's right. We got some news.
We got something right. That's news.
That's right.
That a second season, or rather, the Mandalorian, even prior to the first set of episodes airing, has already been renewed for its second season. In fact, this is what Favreau had to say, Jimmy Kimmel Live, when he appeared on that late night talk show on Thursday, July 11th. He said, "We're done with the first season, and I'm actually writing the part of the second season now. I'm having a blast. It's like turning over your toy chest and playing with all the Star Wars toys together. We're having a great time." Also, interesting, Favreau, while he was on the couch there, sort of clued Jimmy into the premise, and that the Mandalorian is about this bounty hunter. It's set after Return of the Jedi. The Empire's gone, and all hell is breaking loose on the Outer Rim. It's about the scum and villainy. Now that when you take the rule of law out, what happens is chaos takes over. Again, we're going to have to wait till November 12th, so... I'm working the math here. August, September, October, November. All right, 4 months. So we can hang in there for just 4 more months.
Which isn't too bad. And really, the panel that we saw at Celebration Chicago confirmed that, showed us a lot of great behind-the-scenes footage, which really isn't officially out online anywhere. But it very much gave that atmosphere of what happens when the war is done, and how do people rebuild? Once the Empire or the evil monarch has sort of withdrawn and gone elsewhere or disappeared, what do normal people do? How does that create chaos? And I think the Star Wars universe, especially in the underworld, is ripe for that. So I'm really expecting quite a dramatically different tone, and everything seems to be pointing that direction as well.
Now, forgive me for putting this out there, but face it, last year we spent a lot of time talking about how releasing Solo, a Star Wars story, in May on the heels of Episode 8, The Last Jedi, and in December, some people wondered if that was too much Star Wars coming into the marketplace at the exact, in sort of the same window of time. And there's just a part of me that just a little concerned about face it, Mandalorian hits November 12th. Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, arrives in theaters December 20th. On the other hand, it is the end of the Skywalker saga. It's an event. Got to assume people are going to come out for this thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know what you're saying, and I do subscribe to that's why Solo struggled, was because it was so close, and Star Wars consumers are not used to that close. It's not like Marvel, but this is different because the audience of The Mandalorian, while, I guess, of course, it's Star Wars fans, naturally, but it's a different type of thing. It's not like families are going to be getting together around the holidays to watch The Mandalorian in the same way that they will for Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And it's so close to Christmas anyway, and in the fact that it's Skywalker-centric, and it's at least at the time of this recording, the bookend to the great American mythology. I have a feeling that The Mandalorian will just be an appetizer for the diehards, and it won't even be a blip for people who just want to go see a Star Wars movie.
Okay. Well, given that I've been a Debbie Downer, I should at least pass along the good news that we've heard. And again, there are some interesting things popping up about this J.J. Abrams film. I mean, okay, and you and I talked about this guy's name as we were pre-gaming tonight, yes. And I'm still Yunus.
It's Yunus Suatomo. I know it. I know it because I interviewed him last year at Disney World, and he spelled it. He explained it to me phonetically.
Okay, well, Yunus was actually interviewed by IMDb over the last week, and they asked him, kind of a left-handed question, to the effect of, what's your favorite I did not see that coming movie moment? And Yunus's response was actually, probably made the people at Lucasfilm very happy. It was, all of my next movie, but shh. And then the hashtag is, keep them on their toes. So kind of intrigued that he, read the script and made the movie and didn't see a lot of developments coming. On the other hand, Daisy Ridley also seems pretty confident about how Rise of the Resistance is going to appeal to fans of this film franchise. She was just recently interviewed by People Television. She was asked how she thought Episode 9 turned out, or more importantly, whether Star Wars fans would be satisfied with The Rise of Skywalker. And Daisy's response was that she felt that Star Wars fans, I think, here's the direct quote, I think very satisfied with the finished film. Everything we were doing felt in the moment really good. I think the finished product will be pretty epic. And speaking of epic things,
that was my epic music.
There we go. We've all been waiting for this, but we now have official opening dates. for Star Wars Rise of the Resistance, which, according to Disney's PR team, will be, and again, quote from the press release here, folks, the most immersive and advanced attraction Walt Disney Imagineering has ever created. Rise of the Resistance, which reportedly has 23 separate show scenes, will, again, according to the official press release, put guests in the middle of a climatic battle between the First Order and the Resistance. Guests will be recruited to join Rey and General Organa at a secret base. Along the way, they will be captured by a First Order Star Destroyer, and with the help of some heroes of the Resistance, they break out and must escape a Star Destroyer, protect the secret base, and stay one step ahead of Kylo Ren. By the way, speaking of, we were just talking about Daisy Ridley doing some interviews, and did you see the interview where she talked about working on her portion of Rise of the Resistance?
No, I did not.
Oh, it's wonderfully funny little chunk in an interview where basically it was just before Christmas. And again, because they're running and gunning, it was just sort of like, Daisy, you've got an open day on the schedule. The guys from Disney need you to record this moment in the attraction where you're a hologram. And so the poor thing, again, and it has to, step out of, the Rise of Skywalker and go work on her moment of Rise of the Resistance. And evidently, she was so exhausted just remembering the words, and again, because it's a theme park attraction and the dialogue is so specific, you cannot ad lib in any way because, there's show B and it has to be, exactly timed because, again, you have to pulse a certain number of people through the room. It's just I could not do it. It just took so many takes, but the upside is, well, now I'm in a theme park. So, we're all going to get to see Daisy's performance as a hologram, I guess, interacting with BB-8. The Disney World version of this attraction, Dan, is supposed to open on December 5th, which Disney Company officials like to point out is Walt's birthday, whereas the Disneyland Park version isn't going to open until January 17th, which, given the number of stories that are bubbling up in the mainstream media right now, Dan, and we're talking about major newspapers like USA Today and the New York Post, which are talking about the lighter than expected crowds this summer at Disneyland Park. In fact, USA Today actually ran a piece where they sent a plane over Galaxy's Edge and showed how light the crowds were inside of that.
Which has got to make this, that's why this news, and I understand it's a construction thing, that's got to make the Disneyland folks very, very, I'm sure, frustrated. I'm sure nervous. I don't have any inside info on that. Just stands reason they've got this beautiful area, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. And now they're having another, I guess, sort of a delay on this epic attraction. It's too bad,
yeah,
but I'm sure it will pay off.
No doubt. In fact, it's kind of ironic that this is a problem that I think will solve itself starting on, August 19th. There is this whole level of Disneyland annual pass holders, the deluxe, who have the deluxe park pass, that have been blocked out the entire summer. They can finally get into Galaxy's Edge starting on August 19th. And then starting on September 3rd, folks who have the California Select level of annual pass can get back in. But they've been blocked out this entire summer, Dan.
That's right, which has to be the main reason why we've got the situation that we have.
Well, it is a significant part of it. But when we get back from a commercial break, we're going to talk about the interesting mixed messaging Disney put out about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and how it impacted Disneyland summer. Okay, we're back. And Dan, look, you were actually there at Galaxy's Edge. In fact, you were there for the media event. You saw this land almost
the grand opening.
Yeah, you were there and you saw it in its purest form. You saw it, you were there in the crowd and saw Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and Mr. Lucas and Let's not forget about Billy D up there on stage, or standing there by the Millennium Falcon. So, look, if anybody can evangelize about how spectacular this 14-acre area is, that how immersive it is, and the amazing detail and that sort of thing, it's you. I mean,
Yeah.
So, but as you mentioned, as we were headed into the commercial break, it's just sort of, it's got to be frustrating, to the folks at Disneyland to have, for example, the New York Post has a headline to the effect of Disneyland is a ghost town in the summer of 2019.
Which, of course, sells newspapers and gets people to click. But I can honestly tell you, this place, I was actually on a recent Star Wars podcast called The Star Wars Report, and they asked me, what would I prefer, Celebration at its finest or Galaxy's Edge? And I don't even have to think about it. Galaxy's Edge is the absolute best Star Wars experience you can have on this planet. And pretty soon we're going to have it on both coasts of the United States. It's whatever these stories are and whatever's happening, I know we're going to break it down. Trust me, everybody, when I say it is beyond worth it, even without Rise of the Resistance there.
But here's the interesting thing, and I apologize, folks. I know this is anecdotal, but I want, Dan, this seriously happened to me this past Sunday. I had taken Nancy to visit with two friends of hers, and we've just been getting her out of the house post back surgery, and she's been staring at the same four walls and me, and if we don't get her out of the house, she's going to stab me. Anyway, we're collecting Nancy, and her lifelong friend Diane is standing there, and I mentioned that we have to hurry up and get home because, again, remember, you and I were going to be recording on Sunday night. And I mentioned that we'd be talking about Galaxy's Edge, and now you have to understand, Diane lives in central Massachusetts. Okay, she's as far away as possible from Southern California, but when she hears we're talking about, you and I are going to be talking about Galaxy's Edge, she says, "Oh, that's that new land that nobody can get into because the lines are so long." And again, this is somebody, 3,000 miles away from Anaheim, and there is this disconnect, that there is this perception versus reality of what's happened with Galaxy's Edge. And to be honest, Dan, Disney owns a huge chunk of this. I mean, have you managed to see the national broadcast ad for Galaxy's Edge yet?
I have, and it's exceptional.
Oh, it is. It is. I love that it's a father and a daughter, and the little girl. I've waited my whole life to do this, and then they show the two of them in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, and that they're both piloting. And isn't it the daughter who actually does the jump to light speed?
That's right. Sit in the front on the right, and you got it.
Well, here's the thing. It's a beautiful piece of advertising, and then, Dan, in fact, it's Alice who pointed this out. As the ad is ending, and they have this sort of quick shot of Batuu, and the spires of Black Spire Outpost. This the legal boilerplate leaps up on screen, and it reads: "Capacity for the park, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and its experiences are limited. Access to the park, land, and experiences may be restricted or unavailable depending on guest demand or other factors." So, here's the thing. You have this amazing visual that says, "Oh, you should do this," especially if you're a parent, especially, somebody, if you grew up loving Star Wars, you can teach your kids to love Star Wars. But then the end of this ad is like, wow, but be aware you may not get in because this is going to be so busy. And, this has gone on, Dan, since, literally since this project was officially unveiled, so to speak.
Yeah.
August of 2015, and again, it's ironic we were just talking about the D23 Expo, but that's when Bob Iger stood on stage at, talking about how, you're going to be in a place where it feels like you just walked into a Star Wars movie, where you're surrounded by many inhabitants, humanoids, aliens, and droids. And, well, all right, tell you what, let me break this down for you, where I think we got this weird messaging where it was a combination of, oh, you have to go to this because, you're going to get a chance to fly the Millennium Falcon. You're going to get a chance to drink blue milk. You're going to get a chance to hang out in a cantina with all this scum and villainy. Where is at the same time, well, look, literally almost right after the Walt Disney Company bought Lucasfilm for $4 billion, Disneyland celebrates its 60th anniversary on May 22nd, 2015. They kick off their 60th anniversary celebration with a 24-hour long party that starts at 6 a.m. But by 2:30 that day, Dan, Disneyland has reached capacity, which at this time was 65,000 people, and was forced to close to guests. And there were thousands of annual pass holders who wound up being turned away. And the gates to the happiest place on earth didn't reopen till 2:30 in the morning the following day, May 23rd. And the interesting thing is that the mantra that day, I was there as a member of the press covering the event, and the mantra was like, wow, if it's this busy today, what's Disneyland going to be like when Star Wars Land opens up? Even the parking lot, every parking lot, official parking lot that was attached to Disneyland filled up that day. And so, as construction began in April of 2016, Disneyland tried to alleviate that. They announced in August of 2016 they'd be building the Eastern Gateway project, which was supposed to be this brand new parking structure that was going to be accessible straight from the 5. Only the gimmick was where the Mickey and Friends parking structure, Dan, it's deliberately set up so it captures people as they drive down from LA. The Eastern Gateway project was going to have a parking garage right by the highway, but it was designed to capture guests as they drove up the 5 from San Diego. More to the point, to make sure that these folks could get into the park as quickly as possible, they were going to create a pedestrian path and an elevated bridge that took the people straight over Harbor Boulevard and then put them into, so they could just basically pass with security and get into the park. And in this same window of time, because, again, they were anticipating we're going to open Star Wars Land, there's going to be a huge demand for tickets, it began creating the system where they tried to sort of steer guests to less popular days of the week. So they created a demand-based ticketing system where tickets could be divided into value, regular, and peak days, with the notion that if you wanted to get, a good value when you bought your admission to Disneyland, you had to go middle of the week. You had to go Tuesday, Wednesday. If on the other hand you were going on a regular day, you would buy a ticket for Monday, Friday, and if it were peak, you'd be buying for Saturday, Sunday. But to sort of artificially force people to consider these ideas, they bumped up ticket prices. And then in February of 2017, they did it again. They bumped up ticket prices, especially annual passes, and all of it with an eye toward we have too many annual pass holders. And if we want to avoid what just happened at Disneyland's 60th anniversary party, we need to thin the herd. And the way you do that is you make it so pricey that people decide, well, maybe I shouldn't renew my annual pass. Anyway, October of that same year, the Eastern Gateway project gets canceled, largely because Disney is suddenly dealing with a lot of really negative press because of this bridge that's going over Harbor Boulevard, which means that all those people who were coming up from San Diego, this bridge wasn't going to allow, for safety and security reasons, wasn't going to allow people, once they pass through security, to get back out on Harbor Boulevard and go to the restaurants and shops there. And a lot of folks in Anaheim and Garden Grove thought this was Disney being greedy and not being a good neighbor, and so they canceled that idea, and they then decide to build that giant parking structure that you probably saw during your visit there.
Yes, I sure did.
Pixar Palace. Again, now we get to January of 2019. Disneyland once again raises its ticket prices. The most elite pass, the one that can get you admission into Disneyland Resort's 2 theme parks as well as Walt Disney World's 4 theme parks, jumps from $1,579 a year to almost $2,000 and $1,949 a year,
which is substantial.
It is, and see, that's the thing. There's this constant message of, between. Take, for example, what they did next. January 24th, 2019, Disneyland Resort walks a group of journalists and bloggers around Disneyland to point out all of the changes that have been made during something they called Project Stardust, which is what they did is they went through Disneyland with a particular attention on Fantasyland, Frontierland, and Adventureland, which were the 3 different ways they felt the public was going to access Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at the back of the park. And they went through and widened walkways in those parts of the park. They removed planters. They pulled down sidewalk curbs. They rearranged, for example, how stroller parking was done in Adventureland. And again, all of this to make it easier for guests, large groups of guests, to get back to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And again, this unsaid message here is that, oh my God, this theme park is going to be so crowded. We're going to be dealing with so many people that we had to take out parts of Disneyland that have been here since the mid 1950s. And again, I don't think Disneyland understood how people were going to process that info. But at the same time, they're continually focused on what they think is the positive aspects of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I mean, February of 2019, we had that 3-day-long media event where they took a select group of media up to Lucasfilm first, to their complex at the Presidio in San Francisco, to sort of, give them the mythos and mythology of the Star Wars films. And then they took them to Imagineering headquarters in Glendale and showed, the dedication the Imagineers were going to put into bringing this world to life, creating these immersive environments that people could walk through. And then the very next day, here are people in hard hats walking around Galaxy's Edge, and you remember, Dan, that the people who got to do this just marveled at it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, Clayton Sandell came on the show as soon as he got back, and we did 2 shows about it, and I'll never forget him saying, "You'll believe a grown man can cry when they see the Falcon."
And that I'm looking forward to my tearing up moment when I finally get there. But okay, March of 2019, after all of this waiting, all of this wondering, we finally get our opening dates, and we get Anaheim version opens May 31st of this year, and the Disney Hollywood's version, that's a little later, August 29th. But the downside is we also find out, oh, by the way, Rise of the Resistance is being held back to Phase 2. So, all right, that's a little concerning, but, still, this sounds amazing. And again, based on what folks like Carly and Clayton, were telling us about, you have to check out Black Spire Outpost. But again, tail end of March, here's both Disneyland and Walt Disney World announcing that starting on May 31st, they're putting a brand new stroller policy in place. Strollers larger than 31 inches wide and 52 inches long will no longer be allowed in the stateside parks. Likewise, stroller wagons are banned altogether. So again, we get this message of, oh my God, it's going to be so crowded. Do you really want to go to this place? It's going to be so crowded that they're cutting down the sizes of strollers. And to further keep this mantra going, Dan, April, word gets out that the Disney Company, anticipating turning away crowds during the first summer of Anaheim's Star Wars Galaxy's Edge being open, they're going to prevent Disney cast members as well as Disney Company employees who have complimentary main gate admission. They're not going to honor those tickets anymore. Those employees are prevented from entering the park from May 18th through August 30th. And so again, no room for strollers, no room for cast members, very, very, very crowded. And then the kind of the cherry on the sundae here was the announcement on April 23rd, where look, if the first 3 weeks that Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Anaheim was going to be open, if you wanted to get in, you were going to need a reservation. And and again, it's not only it's a reservation, it's a complicated process. You first have to set up a Disney account to even register for a reservation, and then this reservation's only going to get you into Galaxy's Edge for a 4-hour long window of time. And to be honest, if you really, 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 really want to get in, you have to, you should maybe look at booking a stay at the Disneyland Hotel or the Grand Californian or the Pacific Pier between May 31st and June 23rd. So now, again, it's getting into Galaxy's Edge is complicated and potentially expensive. And by the way, you're only going to get 4 hours in there. And again, Dan, can you see the cumulative message that Disney is putting out? And I know this is all because they wanted to not create a crowded situation.
Well, yeah, it's a paradox by definition is two mutually exclusive events or things happening at the same time that are both correct. So yes, it would be and can be crowded, and yes, there is going to be some challenges. But that's no different than going to a convention or Endgame the first 2 weeks it was out or whatever. I think they were so overly cautious, maybe a little anxious because they've got a lot of time and money and effort put into this thing. So they were being so overly cautious that it could possibly be preventing some people from taking the chance. I mean, I talked to a lot of people who said, "Oh, I'm going to wait till the crowds die down." But to be fair, I feel like those people would have said that regardless. I don't think everyone is as in the know or pays as much attention as some of us do to it. And the fact that they're not letting pass holders in, since, as you've said many times, it's the most popular regional theme park, I mean, that's got to be a gigantic reason why this is even going on. Although, yes, it is a mixed message. I definitely see that. At some point, you just have to kind of open the doors up and say, just let the chips fall where they may. We want people in here. They're going to love it.
Well, that, to me, is the most interesting part of this. Because face it, June 24th, after the preview period where everybody needed advance reservations to get in, this is the first day it's open to the general public. And, in fact, they had that whole Disney app boarding groups thing set up. And the interesting thing is that was the only day you actually needed a boarding group to get in. In fact, by the afternoon, they stopped using the system. In fact, for me, Dan, I think the most telling thing is 2 days later, June 26th, after that they're seeing the level of crowds that are coming into Disneyland and making their way back to Galaxy's Edge, the Disneyland Resort very quietly lifts the restriction that bars cast members from visiting Galaxy's Edge for the entire summer. They were like, never mind what we said, you can get in here now. And now, like I said, a little further back in the show, we mentioned that we now have opening dates for Rise of the Resistance. December 5th at Disney's Hollywood Studios and January 17th at Disneyland. And I have to tell you, Dan, based on what folks in Orlando are telling me, the folks at Disney World are determined that they will not get this thing going where they have this message about how wonderful the land is and then actions that tell people to stay away. So, for example, they're going to be doing annual pass holder previews starting on August 1st. And then they're actually going to be allowing annual pass holders, which, let's be fair here, it's easier to do in Florida because they have far fewer annual pass holders for the Walt Disney World Resort. But they're going to allow those folks in even before, the media event on August 29th. But they are determined, again, to put out a very different message. And again, let's be positive here that starting again on August 29th, when the deluxe annual pass holders are no longer blocked, you're going to see all of those folks who've been dying to get in and get a blue milk to the bar at Oga's Cantina, they're going to be allowed into the park. And then on September 3rd, we're going to see the folks who have the California Select Annual Pass get in. And I anticipate that Disneyland's light crowd problem will go away.
Oh, I did too.
But at the same time, look, you and I both know that you only have one chance to make a first impression. And when you have newspapers like USA Today and the New York Post doing stories about, lighter than expected, attendance at Disneyland Park for the summer of 2019, and did Star Wars Galaxy's Edge deliver? That's part of the problem that Disney is facing. That's a hard narrative to make go away. And I can't help but think that in the future, people who work in promotions and marketing are going to study the launch of the Disneyland version of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and use it as an example of how not to launch a new land. That when you put muddled messaging out there, again, you have people like our friend Diane, 3,000 miles away from Disneyland, who hear, oh, yeah, that's that thing that's so crowded people can't get in. Anyway.
No, I know. It's definitely a tricky thing. I can't imagine it's not going to be an overwhelming success once it gets going, but I think the litmus test is Wizarding World. And how that took over the universe. I mean, and theme parks were changed forever, which is obviously a major inspiration for Galaxy's Edge. And I think we're going to get to that, but it's obviously been much, much more of a slow drip.
No, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, in fact, the interesting thing is that, when you go to Universal Orlando Resort, and, I've been lucky enough to get some backstage tours and that sort of thing. The interesting thing is, when you move through, Disneyland has cast members, Universal has team members. When you move through team member only areas, one of the common things that you'll see is photographs taken in June of 2010 of the opening of the Wizarding World, where they had lines that basically wrapped around the entirety of City Walk, of people who were determined to get in to be among the first to experience Hogsmeade. That people stood in 10-hour lines, and all summer long they actually had those lines. And you're right. I think in a lot of ways Disney looked at that and, well, surely we're going to have that exact same thing happen during the first summer of Galaxy's Edge, and so let's prepare. Let's build our parking structures. Let's get rid of those curbs. Let's decide, what we're going to do about strollers. And it's just, the weird thing is that I don't think, I think that was a smart decision, but I don't think they understood the message they were putting out, as you mentioned, sort of a drip, drip, drip kind of way about crowding, and that you really want to go and deal with, crowds of that way. And I guess that's the other real irony here, Dan. In fact, just this week, Disneyland, as people, as reporters began contacting them and doing the whole, well, I hear you're a ghost town. I hear you have, fewer people there. And they're like, do you understand we just opened a brand new 14-acre land? We have increased this theme park's capacity by 25%. Maybe what you're actually seeing is the same group of people who normally go to Disneyland, only spread out so much further because we did such a good job.
Yeah, and they have. When you were there, you don't feel like everything was sardined in. I mean, it really is an organizational marvel, and I can't wait till people who normally go to Disneyland will get to check it out. And it is. We have talked for a long time about how the folks in Disney World are going to be looking closely at what happens in California, so they know to kind of what to do, how to process that. We still haven't found out how they're going to open up the one in Walt Disney World, but it will definitely be interesting to see how California is going to impact that.
No, we will continue to talk about this topic, obviously, in the weeks ahead, and I would imagine over at your other podcast, Dan, this is also going to be a topic of discussion. And speaking of your other podcasts, if folks are listening, enjoy the dulcet tones of Dan Zehr. where else can they find you around the web?
Sure, thanks for the plug. It's Coffee with Kenobi is my weekly podcast. We've been going on for over 6 years now, and we always have things to make you think and make you laugh. We cover the news, we look at the films, books, all kinds of stuff. We also have a Patreon page, which has an exclusive podcast called CWK Pour-Over, where we look at popular culture. Star Wars naturally comes up quite often. But, for example, recently we just did a review of Spider-Man Far From Home, which was great fun. And it's fun to kind of flex my popular culture muscles in different areas. And then you can find my writing on stars.com and IGN.
Oh, I actually have to go over there and listen to it. I'd love to hear what you had to say about Star Wars. Or, excuse me, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Absolutely.
Okay, my side of the fence, we got the usual shows here, folks. We got Disney Dish with Len Testa. We got Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. We also got I Want That with Michelle Valladolid. That's our Disney merch show. We also have Universal Joint with Dustin Fuse, and we do quite a bit of talking about the Wizarding World over there. And again, ironically enough, for just talking about Spider-Man, we have the Marvelous Disney podcast that I do with Aaron Adams. Let's see, what else? Folks, if we could ask a favor here, if you could head over to iTunes to rate and recommend both the shows you hear here as well as Dan's shows, that would be incredibly helpful. Likewise, if you really, really, really like what you hear here, heading over to Bandcamp and subscribing, much like Dan's Patreon effort that helps keep the lights on here. And I guess for now that will do it, Dan. You're headed off for a family vacation, so have a great time.
Thank you.
And I'm hoping by the time you get back, we will have all sorts of Lucasfilm-related news having come out of Comic-Con, and we will, I guess, talk about that when we next get back here to do a show.
I'll be ready.
Okay. Well, we'll talk to you then, folks, okay? Take care.